Okay, we're going to be learning, it's a short mimer from Tafshin Lamed Ches 19, I'm assuming it'll be ready by then, 1978, on this week's Parsha V'Yechi. The Rebbe said it, Erev Asar Teves. It was Matzi Shabbos, Erev Asar Teves in the Rebbe's room. The Rebbe was after the heart attack then, and the Rebbe was still bringing, even though he came down to bring on Chanukah, but the Rebbe was still bringing in the room some of the times. So this is a mimer from that gathering. So like it says, Maamar Text, the 10th of Teves, the year Tafshin Lamed Ches, which is corresponding to the year 1978. So the Rebbe says like this. We'll do it slow, 20 minutes maybe over a period of 2-3 days. The Rebbe says, the pasuk says, this is a bracha. In general, this is a mimer that's based on the first mimer of the Torah or of this week. And in general, the mimer of Torah or the pnim of Torah are all on the brachas from Yaakov to Yehudah. In the Haisafa, in the extras, there's the parts also with the brachas to Yosef. But in general, the two main camps is Yehudah and Yosef, as we know. The Yigish love Yehudah. So the main emphasis on the Maamar of V'Yechi is on the brachas of Yehudah. So he says like this: Yehudah Atah Yoducha. The pasuk says that Yaakov tells Yehudah, your brothers are going to thank you, or be thankful towards you. And the Alter Rebbe brings down in the Sefer Torah or in the beginning of this week's parsha. Again, there's three Maamarim on the brachas of Yehudah. This is the first of the three. Yehudah, who Al Shem, the name Yehudah comes that, like Leah said when she named her son Yehudah, which is again the fourth of her sons. She has 6 sons, so the fourth of her 6 sons is Yehudah. Is Hapam Oides Avaya. Hapam means now I will thank. Hapam, this time I will thank Hashem. Which is what does this mean? Now the Rebbe explains to Bechinas Haydash Beklos Neshamas Yisrael, the ability or that inner acknowledgement that Klal Yisrael has, the Jewish people have, that to acknowledge this is the way it is, that every nefesh Yisrael have, that every Jewish person has, is rooted in the concept of Yehudah, Hapam Oida. Now his next meaning, what we're going to learn in the Maamar is, in this Maamar, based on again the Torah, is the value of Hoda'ah. In general, Hoda'ah, acknowledgement, has two ways to look at it. You could look at Hoda'ah, meaning the second person says, I acknowledge this is the way it is. We agree with you. We agree this is the way it is. Not that you understand. Hoda'ah is levar migufay of the midos. So the core midos are chesed, gvur, tferes, which we're going to learn. That's Reuben, Shimon, and Levi. The extension is the right. The left foot is Hoda'ah, acknowledgement. The right foot is netzach, perseverance, and then Yisod is in the middle. So you have a sexual organ, which is corresponding to Yosef. So Yehudah is in this case we're talking about Yehudah as in the concept of Hoda'ah, acknowledgement. So seemingly acknowledgement is a low level. Like we start off in davening, we start off Hoidu Hashem Kir B'Shmai. Before we even start saying anything, we acknowledge there's Hashem. We wake up in the morning, we say Moidani. So acknowledgement is you haven't built yet. You just know this is the way it is. You don't have it clear yet. But then there's the acknowledgement, which Yehudah is really not the acknowledgement of the beginning of the davening of Hoidu Hashem. Yehudah is really the acknowledgement of Shemona Esrei, the highest point in davening. There's the acknowledgement where you build up to your mind, your heart, which is the tefillah, the psuki de zimra, the brechus krishman, and the shema, the have to loving Hashem. And in shema itself, there's the part of the have to, and there's the yira, the hayim shemaya, the re'i and the shemir, like we're going to learn. And then it comes back to Hoda'ah, acknowledgement. It means you reach so high that you realize that after you loved, you realize that the build on that is that there's something even greater than the highest point that you could reach on your own, and all you could do is acknowledge that it exists. And sometimes we say, for instance, that there's the idea of bracha. Bracha means to bring it down. It shouldn't just be acknowledgement, but to actually feel it. But then there's a Hoda'ah from bittul, which is that's what Leah says. And that's why it says Vatamid Miladis. She stops giving birth. Because when you're in a mode of bittul, self-nullification, you can't give birth to anything else. It's not about you. So here it says, Apam oides Hashem, I'm going to acknowledge Hashem, which the Rebbe says in short, based on the Torah, on the broad explanation, that concept of Haidash B'Kos Neshamos Yisrael, the ability that Neshamos Yisrael have this unwavering, not built on our mind or our hearts, but this is an acknowledgement. We know this is the way it is. There's a certain inner certainty. That's the acknowledgement that we have from Yehudah, Apam oides Hashem, which is in every single Jewish person. How do we reveal this? The brothers of Reuben, Shimon, and Levi. That's why it says, Yehudah Atah Yoducha, your brothers are going to thank you because Yehudah elevates from Reuben, Shimon, Levi to the level of Yehudah of acknowledgement. Yehudah, the brothers of Yehudah, that were born before him. So born before him, not just in the brothers being born before him, but also in Avodah Hashem. First comes the Avodah of Reuben, then comes the Avodah of Shimon, as we're going to learn, and the Avodah of Levi. We're going to learn what those three Avodas are. And the culmination of it isn't stopping there, sort of say satisfaction, sort of say you have God, you have all the way to Levi, to the level of Levi, God is accompanying you. So to say you're in the moment. But because God is infinite, there is no in the moment with God. So the higher you go, then you go out of that moment into the Hoda'ah of acknowledgement, something beyond you, which is the bittul. That's why the pasuk says that your brothers will thank you, Sha'achicha, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, which means that in this case that Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, they're the cause, Yehudah. Means Yehudah Atah, in acknowledgement of your brothers, doesn't just mean the acknowledgement of your brothers of thanking you or appreciating you, but also creating you. Yehudah is built on the foundation of Reuben, Shimon, and Levi. Hema Garmim, they're the cause, and bring the person to the Haidah. Shetib is that this Haidah, this acknowledgement, this certainty. In this acknowledgement, there's a certainty. When you acknowledge, it's not, you can't argue. This is the way it is. I made this the way it is. I acknowledge this is the way it is. You may not have the words to articulate it, but it's certain to you. And how do you reveal that certainty, that Hoda'ah, which comes from a bittul self-nullification, because Hashem is certain, right? Godliness is certain. It's not like it's an outside thing. And every nefesh alikis, every Jewish person is rooted with the shorish, with the root of godliness. And so that to reveal it comes through Reuben, Shimon, and Levi. And then the Hoda'ah comes, acknowledgement comes revealed within the person. The Rebbe continues in Mevarshem. The Rebbe over there explains, meaning the Alter Rebbe explains in the Maamar of Text, this week's parsha, that what are the three avodas of Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, which we're saying that Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, the brothers, build up and reveal that Yehudah, the acknowledgement, comes to be revealed within every Jewish person, is Reuben, Shimon is base parshas to Kriya Shema. They're the first two parshas, the first two parts of the Shema, meaning V'hafta, Shema Yisrael V'hafta, and V'hayim Shemaya. That's Reuben is V'hafta, and V'hayim Shemaya is Shimon. Levi is Emes V'yatziv, which is the Emes V'yatziv also is a word of Emes that comes after Kriya Shema, which is the third part of the Shema. By days by Machach, the Shemona Esrei, and from there we can build up the stand. Shemona Esrei, which is Hoda'ah, which is Yehudah. Bittul the B'chinas Yehudah, and stand the Shemona Esrei in such a way, and therefore, on the contrary, because Yehudah is built on Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, actually, where Reuben, Shimon, and Levi have to be all about God, which is I love God, with all my might, God, kind of getting out of your gashmius. Because so to say, you're stripping yourself of the physicality to connect to the spiritual. Yehudah is such a high level of acknowledgement that specifically that's why you talk in the davening. You're davening about worldly things. I mean, if you open the Shemona Esrei, so you have the first three brachas and the last three brachas, but in the middle is all about the brachas that you're asking for, the things that you need, the things like health, wealth, parnasa, all the things that you're asking for. Is in the Shemona Esrei specifically because it's a Hoda'ah, because you could reach a level of bittul that you could. It's not a contradiction. Be asking for your worldly, mundane needs while you're standing in absolute bittul to Hashem. And how could you reach such a level where you're asking God for health and wealth and success, at the same time be totally nullified, have self-nullification. It's built on the foundation of Reuben, Shimon, Levi. When you reveal the Reuben within you, and you reveal the Shimon and the Levi, then you could elevate even higher outside. But it's not that you have to, basically, like the Alter Rebbe says, that Reuben, Shimon, Levi is within Seder Shtalshus, within the chain of creation, within Mimad Kalam, how Hashem fills the world. So then you either if you're going to focus on the material, you're kind of not focusing on the spiritual. But if you could lift yourself out of the limitations of this world, it's not a contradiction then to be simultaneously connected mamish to Hashem, because you're bottled, you totally nullified to Hashem. Simultaneously, what you're asking for your needs, because your needs are not a contradiction to serving Hashem, because your needs are a way for you to serve Hashem, and you're healthy to serve Hashem better, and you're so connected. It's not you have any kind of, so to say, like we learned today in the morning. There's no kind of foreign agenda that's about your own health or your own wealth or your own success. That okay, and I'm going to also serve Hashem. You're able to lift yourself up where you're totally clear that everything about your existence is to serve Hashem, and therefore, of course, you need to be healthy to serve Hashem. Of course, you have to have parnasa to serve Hashem. So the Rebbe continues. That this so the Torah explains what is so that in the first sif that we just learned now, the first paragraph is the idea that Yehudah is acknowledgement, and Yehudah. What's it mean? Yehudah Atah Yoducha, Yehudah Atah Yoducha, that you mean thankful. Your brothers are thankful to you, but also basically they're building you up. Is that through Shimon Levi, through Reuben Shimon Levi, you could get to Yehudah, which is the acknowledgement, which is the Shemona Esrei, through the first two parts of the Shema, the V'hafta and V'haya, and then V'yatziv, Ems V'yatziv. That brings the person to get to the highest point, which is actually to be able to stand as a servant, totally nullified with the certainty, with the acknowledgement to Hashem, and stand in the sound Shemona Esrei. Like it's like Eliyahu Navi says, like B'rash Hashem, like B'eish Hashem, like B'ruach Hashem. He called him Amadaka. The called him Amadaka is the Tefillah Shemona Esrei, the silent sound of the bittul standing in front of Hashem. So now he explains how this works. But Indian, the idea is like this. As it explains of the entire in the first Maamar of this week's parsha, that the name Reuben is like Leah says, Ki ra'ah, that Hashem saw, is the idea of re'iyah, to see. Shimon is on the name Kishama, God heard. So there's seeing and there's hearing. What does this mean in Avodah Hashem? And then again, in the Maamar of Torah, the Alter Rebbe goes into length explaining the idea of Reuven, of this, when you see something, to know something. There's you can know something means what's the difference between knowing something? Because seeing, we know that the idea of to see something is certainty. That's why Ein Eid Nasadain, a person who witnesses an incident, you can't judge the same incident that you witnessed. So one could say, what do you mean? If I saw it, I surely could judge it because I know it happened. But that's actually not the way it works, because in order to be a proper judge according to halacha, you have to be able to be partial. And if you've seen something, you're so certain what you've seen that you're not going to be able to be partial. You say, what do you mean? But then it's a contradiction, because if I know it's true, then what's the difference if I'm certain of what the rule should be or what the judgment should be? But it's the truth. That's what happened. But that's not how halacha works, because halacha has to be able to see it from a perspective where you don't have that certainty. So what is Riyah? Riyah is that you see something, I see, like Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to give to the Jewish people that to see godliness. When you see godliness, you have certain certainty. So then the question is, if seeing godliness is certainty, what's the difference between seeing something and acknowledging something? So that we're going to explain the Maamar. It means although you see something, you have certainty, but you're still seeing it from an outside perspective. And that's specifically why you ain't Nasadai. Because it's still possible to see something, like the Rebbe says in the line about the Tetzava, seeing something is not a guarantee how you're going to behave. It's still not a guarantee they're going to go to Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh comes from the Hoda'ah, from the bittul. Just because you see something, it's not certain how you're going to act on it. You can be certain about the fact of something. Your connection to it comes deeper from Hoda'ah, from acknowledgement, than from the certainty of seeing something. So that's even the Maamar. It says the idea of Reuven is kirah, that she says God saw my situation. Leah's naming Reuven for that reason. Shimon Kishama, God heard my situation. What is this in Avodah Hashem? Called Echad Ech Yisrael. And every single Jewish person, what's the level of Reuven and the level of Shimon? That Bechinas Reuven who Shavadase the Koinoi, that a person's service to Hashem, Koinoi means our master, It's not just because I comprehend and I understand that there's a God. I see it, I know it. I see it because I see it, I know it. I have a certainty. Behind Shehis amtus shaloi, the emes, it's amtus in the word emes, the truth, the certainty. Belikus is the highest level. I saw it, I see it, I see godliness. Like if someone were to see something, if you've seen it, right? You see, you had to see it to believe it. Why? Because when you see it, you know what happened. Someone did argue with you, it didn't happen. It doesn't make sense. But I saw it. So seeing something is certainty. You keep it true. You didn't hear about it. You heard from someone else who said, so then you're hearing it. Then you don't have that certainty. But if you've seen it, so you yourself saw it, you know it's for sure. That's the way it is. So what does this mean in Avodah Hashem? It's not that means the Riyah itself is also comes from this blindness, comes from contemplation. It means I'm contemplating, but the contemplation brings me to a certainty, a Riyah. And here the Rebbe says in the footnote number 7 that why does it say B'frat b'shkacha pratis? That specifically the certainty comes from hashkacha pratis, from divine providence. Meaning to say, not just because you see this blindness, you see the way Hashem created the world, but when you see certain things happening that are so clear that God is running the world, that's hashkacha pratis, right? So then you know for sure there's a God. Let's just bring it down to footnote number 7. The Rebbe says, you see clearly divine providence. And therefore you have that certain level of certainty. Therefore he brings out there's a difference. When a person is realizing that everything comes from nothing, that's his blindness of creation. Whereas you see Pashut, you pay attention, you realize that this is Pashut, God's running the world. And that gives you a higher level of certainty. Like you say, that the certainty that a business person has. Because a business person, he or she who sees Hashkach Pratis constantly, the divine providence in their life, how things come together, or how things happen, however you want to look at it, whatever we're talking about. It's so clear that there's a God. And it's such a his amtus, it's such an emes, such a truth that's in a way of his stackless, as if you see it. That his blindness specifically, like the Rebbe says, when it comes to from things of Hashkacha Pratis, divine providence in the world, comes to such a level of emes as if you've seen it. So here we're starting to see already the difference between what Reuben and Yehudah. Because Reuben says, so I see Hashem, I see Hashkacha Pratis. So what does that mean? So you're not bottled yet. You're not nullified to God. And that's why, like I said before, seeing something doesn't mean you're going to act on it. But when you see it, and you're so certain, and it's surrounding you. So what it brings you is to loving Hashem. But still, I love Hashem. Yesh Mishayev. Someone who loves God. So it builds you up. You still are your own Metzias, own being. But because you have the certainty of God, and especially you see how God is running, I love Hashem. Reuben, like she said, Leah, when she named her first son Reuben, he saw my situation and now he's going to love me. By seeing something, now I'm going to love. So after we have the whole davening, and you have this certainty of Hashem, so you say, I love Hashem Ador. I love Hashem Ador. That's Reuben. And this is one has to properly go into Alter Rebbe's Maamar, because this is built on a person hopefully already having some information about the Maamar, about these ideas. The Rebbe continues. So that's Reuben. What's Shimon? Shimon, the idea of Shimon is Hashem Kishamash. I heard. Now, hearing something doesn't have the same certainty as seeing something. It comes from listening, which means hasaga, understanding, but not the certainty of seeing. Someone tells you something, you hear something. Now, the difference is that they both have value. It means if you start off with seeing something, so why do you have to go to Shmiyah to listening to something? You already have the seeing something. But seeing something doesn't mean necessarily, again, it's like seeing a picture. You see it, you love it, you haven't internalized it really 100%. You don't always understand what you see, and you're not yet committed to what you see, but you know what you see. And so therefore you have a love for it, but to haven't, it's actually the fact that you can love it shows a certain level of distance. Shmiya is vasal, you start to understand it. Standing already is more personal, you're bringing it in. Like it said, that the shmiya actually brings fear, because it's actually the opposite reaction of seeing something, which is the love, like the Rebbe explains in the Maamar. Because it's this, the shmiya is mirachik, it's from a distance actually, and that distance kind of is your personal. You're able to personalize it more, and it actually gives you a certain level of fear of Hashem, as opposed to loving it because it's starting to get a little bit more part of you. But you still distance. But you didn't see it, so there's a distance between you and the happening. It comes in fear. It's because you hear about it, but in order to connect to it, you have to start personalizing it, because you're starting to listen to it. When you see something, you see it. So you could, there's a certain seemingly there's a certain safety. You saw it, so it is. So you love it, but when you hear it, you have to take it in more, because you don't see it. So you have to listen from this. So therefore, it starts to build, and the closer it comes to you, so to say, inside of you, starts to build up the idea of fear. That's why V'hayim Shemaya is the Yiras Hashem. It's the second parsha of Shema. V'hayim Shemaya Tishmu, which says of the idea of Shemaya to hear. Yisham Lechem Penifta. Yisham Lechem is the idea of fear. Be careful. Because you're only hearing it. If you're only hearing it, so you'll see you have to have more guard. You have to be guarded. But again, if it's coming after the Reuben, because the Hafta comes first, so obviously that there's it's not that you didn't have the Riyah in the Hafta, and therefore you're on a lower level in Shmiya. And so Moshe Rabbeinu says about Yisrael Shema, right? Moshe wants to give you that we should have certainty in Riyas Alikus, and he couldn't give us the visual, so he gives us the At Yisrael Shema, gives us the fear. They're listening, so that's a lower level. But here we have this Shema. You have the Reuven, the first parsha. You can't say that the second parsha of Krishma is only for the person who doesn't know how to see in the first parsha. If you can't do the first parsha, then you can fall back on the second parsha. It's that doesn't say, there's no foundation for that. You have to say you have the first parsha, and it's the whole point of it. You're building up to Yehudah. You have the first parsha, which is Reuven the certainty. Nevertheless, there's the Shimon after the first parsha, which is the Re'iyah, the fear. Why? Because, like the Alter Rebbe explains a little bit more in the Maamar, is that there's a certain, from the Abbas Hashem kind of is, there's you see it, and therefore you're not required actually to personalize it, because you see it, and so you know it, and then you could love it from a Yesh Mishayim. But to listen to something, you have to start to bring it, you have to come part of it more. It comes into, it's inside of you. You're listening to it, you have to digest it, you have to understand it. If you don't understand it, then you have no connection to it. So you need to start understanding it. But God is hard to, but how can you understand 100% Hashem? So you have to be watchful. And after that comes, in this Levi, what's the level of Levi? Is the Hashem, Yilavi Ishilai. Leah says that now my husband's in a company. So the Alter Rebbe says then in the Maamar, that the Pami love Ishilai, that now my husband's going to accompany me. Where a person says, like the Yira comes from, again, in the Maamar of the Alter Rebbe explained that the Yira starts when a person starts to actually recognize that, yes, I see Hashem and I love Hashem, but how can I be connected? How can I be close to Hashem? I know who I am. I know my faults. I know we're not perfect. And that's really the process of the Shmiya, the listening. When you're listening, you start actually applying yourself and connecting yourself to Hashem. It's no longer just something that you're looking at. And then you say, 1 second, but how can I have a connection to Hashem? I know who I am. I know my behavior. I know I'm not perfect. I'm not far from perfect. Comes the Meriris. So the Alter Rebbe says, comes Levi. And what's Levi say? 1 second. Maybe should give me Torah. God gave me Torah mitzvahs. I could do a mitzvah right now. And that when I do a mitzvah, I'm accompanying Hashem. Hashem is accompanying me at this moment. When I learn Torah, God is sitting with me learning Torah. So the Levi's actually, after you go into the fear, the bitterness of the shemi of listening, when you're no longer just seeing it, but you have to actually say, 1 second, where's the logic of me and God together? But then you say, 1 second, I could do a mitzvah. That's Hashem accompanying you. So then again, but you're still building up yourself in your relationship with Hashem. So Levi Hashem Yilavi Ishi Ilai Hu Masha Aker Ishma Omer Emes V'Yatziv Hadavar Azeh Aleinu Hadavar Azeh Koyel Torah. What's the Hadavar Azeh? The Torah, through Torah you accompany Hashem. They Torah Nasi Yilavi Ishi Ilai, as will be explained. Okay, let's stop here actually. And tomorrow we'll finish. Let's just do this slowly. We could do this in 3 parts. And tomorrow we'll go through the second part and hopefully finish the Maamar by the third part. Some fascinating ideas that the Rebbe talks about Yehudah, that the idea of Yehudah is, because Yehudah is the Hoda'ah, it kind of connects to the supernatural. And the supernatural could start even now before Mashiach comes. You could start having that our hand is over our enemies and we're strong and the Jewish people are strong even before Mashiach comes. All right. Thank you for joining us. Hashem will continue tomorrow. Hopefully we can do it over Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yom Tov.